Hey everyone, I'm Nancy and welcome to So Fancy by Nancy, where I'm bringing you sewing tutorials for all skill levels. In today's video lesson, I'm going to teach you how to make this cosmetic bag. And today we're going to do the larger version, and you can also later do the smaller version, which features the zipper, and you also have zipper tabs as well as box corners. This is a great beginner bag. If you're new to sewing, this will really get you started. You're going to learn 3 skills making this bag. It's a quick sew. So let's grab your machine and let's get started. There's some tools you're going to need to complete this bag, and you'll need a marking pen, possibly a rotary cutter, your sewing shears, some snippers. You're also going to need your zipper foot besides your regular foot for your sewing machine, and add some of your favorite clips to secure the fabric, and also your favorite ruler. And you're going to need your thread and your needle, sewing needle, depending on the thickness of the fabric that you're using. So let's get started. The nice thing about this bag is it doesn't require a lot of fabric. And you're going to need to cut out from your main fabric 2 pieces, and from your lining you're going to cut out 2 pieces. You're going to need to cut your fabric to measure 11 3/4 across by 8 inches high. And you can, depending on the thickness of your fabric, you can put some interfacing behind it on both pieces. My fabric's a little bit thin, so I'm putting interfacing on all of my pieces. Besides that, you're going to need your zipper. You're going to need a zipper that is 10 3/4 inches long. And you're also going to need to cut out fabric for your zipper tabs. You'll need 2 pieces. And these zipper tabs are they'll measure the same width as your zipper. And the length should be 2.5 inches long. So get all of that prepared, and the first thing we're going to do is start with the zipper. You'll take one of your zipper tabs, put it right side touching the zipper on both ends. You'll need to finish this off, and you'll just stitch across it with a 1/2 inch seam allowance on each side. Okay, now that you've gotten that far, you can fold over on the tab you've already sewn on this portion here. Fold it over, and then fold the other end in halfway, and fold it over again. So you're just covering up the zipper. For now, we're just going to add a couple clips in there to hold it together. We're not sewing it down yet, so do that on both sides, and stick a clip in there just to hold it down temporarily. We'll have an opportunity to straighten it out later before we stitch it down. Now, with your zipper open, I find this easiest. Find the center of your zipper and put a mark on each side of the center. And then we're also going to find the center on one of your main panels. Find the center. If you just crease it a little bit, the center should hold. And then just draw a mark on there. That's to help to line up the zipper. And now what we're going to do is, with the fabric right side up, we're going to place the zipper face down and match up those marks. We're getting ready to stitch on part of the zipper. And then go ahead and secure that in place. If you're used to working with zipper tape, you can do that. You can pull the zipper pull out of the way, and let's get this secured down with some clips. And once you have it secured down, you're gonna take it over to your machine. Make sure it stays aligned with the edge of the fabric. All the while you're stitching, you may need to move the zipper a little bit out of the way. Once you get down close to the zipper head, pull that up and continue stitching down. You're gonna do that with just a small 1/4 inch seam allowance, stitching across the piece, and only to where the zipper tab ends. Don't go all the way to the end of the panel. You'll stop at the edge of the zipper tab. And then you will repeat that with this other panel. So let's do one, and then I'll show you how to do the second one. Okay, I have secured, put a little hairpin over there to secure this down, and going to begin to stitch. Remember to keep this lined up. Okay, now that we have stitched down one side of the zipper, you can trim any threads that are left over from that step. It's best to always keep your piece clean and without any loose ends there. And now what we're going to do is we are going to repeat this process. So we need to have the zipper now, as it's laying face side down against this, we need to have it face side down on this piece. So here it is face side down, and we are lining it up now on the other piece. To do that, you need to have your center mark again, and you need to match up your center marks. Mine is showing, I also put one in the back, and I have one in the front as well. There's my center. I think that's where you need to spend most of your time, is making sure your centers are lined up. I found my center, and also line up the sides. These sides need to be lined up. Make sure those are lined up as well. It's a little bit easier to see it if you flip it over. So line up everything, and then go to your sewing machine and repeat that same step to sew this side down. Okay, now we're stitching the other side the same exact way. Now that you've sewn on both of the panels, it should be looking like this when you place it face up. And the next step is we're going to be attaching the lining pieces. With the zipper going horizontal, fold over one piece. So you're looking at your zipper from the top edge going down. Take one of your lining pieces and clip in place, matching up the side seams. So I'm going to pop a clip in here and pop a clip in here as well, match up along the top. Actually, you can pop in your clips upside down because we're going to flip this piece over. I'm sorry, this gets a little confusing here. After you do it a few times, it's almost by memory, but I haven't made this bag for a while, so okay, here we go. Now, we've got the clips in place, and what you're going to do is flip the piece over, take it to your machine, and stitch right over the previous stitch. But this time you can go starting from the very edge, from one edge all the way down to the other edge. And then what you're gonna do is repeat that with the other side. So let's do one side first, and then we'll move on to the other side. All right, we're ready to go now, and just remember to move your, I feel the zipper head here, so just remember to move that out of the way. I think I'm going to move mine down already, and then once I get down further where I can bring it back up, I'll do that. So keeping everything aligned, and we want to go on top of the previous stitching. All right, now that we have that stitched down, it's starting to make some sense now. As you can see, here's the outside of your bag, and when you open your bag, it now has lining on one side. So all we need to do is repeat the last step we did. So have your piece with the lining side facing up. Here's the top of your zipper again. We're looking at this side. And place this lining piece on top, clip in place, and remember that your clips can go upside down because we are going to be sewing again along this stitching. So let's get that put together. Stick in your clips, take it to the machine, and sew down the edge just like we just did. All right, now your piece should have your lining attached and also the main fabric attached. And at this point, let's take it to the ironing board and give it a nice pressing, and we'll continue on from there. All right, now that the piece is nice and pressed, what we're going to do is we're going to add some top stitching. We are going to top stitch all the way around the zipper, all the way around here, including crossing over the tabs, and we'll sew it with a 1/8 inch distance from the edge. I've marked my ends 1/8 in, so that helps me when I get to the point of turning, I know where I need to be aligned with. I suggest you start at a midway point and go all the way around continuously, coming back to the midway point, and you can put in a little bit of back stitching. I'm going to sew with black thread, so my choice is that I'm going to start on top of this black print, which is kind of large, because you won't notice where I've back stitched on the top of the bag as much as you would if I started, since I'm using black thread, if I started over a lighter area. So do that, go all the way around, and let's get that step completed. Okay, I am lined up. I have mine set up, so I'm using this side of my foot as a guide. I want this going around the edge of the zipper. And try to do the same. Try to find something that you can line up that will make it easy for you to stitch around this. Remember to back stitch. Now that we've completed stitching around the zipper, we are going to move on to stitching up the sides. Before we do that, what we need to do is, between these seams, we need to open this up and press this open a little bit. We want to press this open because we're going to need to line up the seams. Do that on everything, on the lining, on every corner. So this corner, and inside here as well. Do that on the end of every seam. Press that open as much as you can to flatten it out. Probably go in about an inch is about as far as you'd be able to get in. Go ahead and press that down, and we're going to get moving on to the next step to sew up the side seams. Before we begin, on your lining pieces, on both pieces on the wrong side, make a mark from the right edge 2 3/4 inches in, put a mark in. From the left edge, same measurement, 2 3/4 inches in, and put a mark. Do the same thing, flip your piece over and do that again. I wrote 2 3/4 on here so you would see that. You don't have to write it on, just make sure that you have that measurement, because we're going to be leaving a gap, and we want to have the gap on both sides of the lining piece. We're going to turn the bag out through that gap later on. So now make those marks, and we are going to begin with the side seams. The reason why we pressed on those is so we could match up. When you open up the side seam, you can see the seam a little bit. You'll see part of the lining on one side and part of your main fabric on the other side with the seam in between, and you'll also see that on the reverse side. So what we want to do is we want to line up those seams, one side with the other, put a clip in there and secure it. You might want to put a pin on that one and spread the fabric down, spread the pieces down, the panels towards the edge, the corner, stick a clip in there or a pin, and do that on all the sides, matching up the centers, the midpoints, and the edge, and then work your way in, pinning it down the edges and also along the bottom here. Now, during this process, what you're going to want is you're going to want the zipper tab facing towards the lining. See how I'm pinching it here, and you can see how that lines up? That's what we want to happen. When we stitch this, we're not stitching through the zipper tab. Rather, we're going to stitch right alongside of it. So go ahead and put your clips in. Make sure you line everything up and make sure that you leave the zipper open. We need this open. Okay, if you close it, then you're going to be locked out of your bag. So let's move forward and put all the clips in place. Okay, now that you have all the pins in, clips in, I've done quite a bit on mine. We are going to carefully stitch. You can start at the edge where we're going to leave the gap and go all the way around, crossing right next to the zipper tabs. Take a look there and see how much space you have. You should be able to clear 3/8 of an inch. If you don't, move your seam allowance out a little bit and just use that same amount of seam allowance all the way around the bag. Remember to backstitch at the beginning of the gap on each side. Backstitch on each side. Okay, here we go. I have my seam allowance set for 3/8, and we're just going to go all the way around like I specified earlier. Now that we've completed that step, what you'll want to do is clean up your piece. If there's any stray threads, any fraying on the edges, go ahead and clean that up. And on the bottom edge of your lining, the part that has the gap, go ahead and press that under. That will help later when we're going to close up the gap. So get that far, and now what we're going to do is we are going to box the corners of the bag. So what you'll need to do is use your stitching line as a guide, and you'll want to have a box here, draw a square that's 1 inch square inside this stitching line to begin with. So I'm just going to take my ruler and line it up at 1 inch. I have 1 inch here, depending on what kind of ruler you're using. So this gives me 1 inch there. And on my ruler, since I can see through it and I've drawn my 1 inch line, what I'm going to do is extend that line now all the way to the edge of the fabric. But you'll want to start with your 1 inch square first and do that on all the corners. I have my 4 corners marked out, and now what you're going to want to do is we're going to clip out these pieces, and that way we can get them ready to box the corners. So carefully clip in exactly on those lines to get a nice corner, and do that on all 4 corners. Just take your time. Okay, now that you have your corners clipped out, what we're going to do is you take your bag and pull it out. Pull it kind of tight so you can work with this and match up the seams on every corner. You might have a little bit sticking out on the top. Don't worry about that. Just match this up the best that you can. I have my seam allowances going in different directions, but keep this going in the same direction for the closing up of the gap. And just do all 4 corners. Okay, my bag has the clips in, and I also decided to drop in 1 pin on each side of the clip. And now we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch across every corner with just a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And remember, this is the corner of the bag. This is the outside. This is my exterior. I'm going to run 2 stitches. I want to make sure that this is held down very secure, because once the bag is closed up and we're finished, you can't get back in there. And so just make sure those seams are really sewed down completely. And we will get to the machine now and do that step, and we're almost done. We're going to turn out the bag after that. So let's get to stitching. Okay, I have my 4 corners sewed up, and you should as well. What we're going to do now is going to turn the bag inside out and push out the corners. We will not be doing anything with the tabs right now. And if you want, I went ahead and I did reduce my seam a little bit. I did a little trimming here. It was very minimal, but I wanted to do that. I didn't cut over the tab part. I just cut up and angled out. So go ahead and do that if you want to. And now we will reach our hand inside the bag and turn it out like so. And before we push the lining in place, we want to push out the box corners. We want to push out these corners. You can even give those a little bit of a pressing now if you want to work just with 1 layer, or you can press it once the lining is inside. So you want to push out those corners, and before we put the lining in, we can push these corners out as well. I didn't trim the corners, what we just sewed, the 1/4 inch. I didn't trim that off. I'm leaving the full 1/4 inch there inside the bag. And now, since we press this lightly, it's a lot easier to line up the gap. So now, match up your gap seams that you pressed and put some clips in there. I'm actually going to put 2 pins in. This is where our stitching ended. So I'm going to put a pin just a little bit outside of that, so I know I have reached the full distance sewing to close the gap. So I'm just going to pop in another pin, which again lets me know I'm not going to sew all the way across the bottom of the lining. I just want to close the gap. And the narrower you can stitch to the edge, the nicer it'll look in the inside. And so line it all up. Okay, so I have this pinned, and you just want to make sure that they're even, that the edges meet. And now take this to your machine and sew a very, very, very narrow edge here to close the bag. Okay, I have sewed my very narrow stitching to close up the gap. Just cut off any loose threads and take a look if you have any threads sticking out from this edge as well. And now we're ready to flip this inside the bag and just spread your fingers apart to push out those corners. And now what I'm going to do is pop out the tabs, and I will push that out with a chopstick in the corner here. Carefully work those out on each side. And give it a little push with your finger first. And this is a really nice size cosmetic bag. I think it came out quite well. You can work on those corners and push them out. So they expand a bit. Just be careful you don't rip any stitches. And if you find any loose threads like I have, just trim those up. And now we can zip it. And the bag is completed. How cute is that? I used a zipper by the roll, zipper by the yard they call it also, and I used a different kind of pull. You can decorate your pull, you can put a tassel on there. I'm just going to leave this one, I think, without anything. And you can see pictures on my website of where I have added some cording on the end. The only thing we have left to do is just give this a nice pressing. And remember, you can still pull the bottom out to press it if you need to. It's not attached to the bottom, so it's looking very sharp. The other thing is, if you're selling bags, you can add a label inside, or you could put one inside the seam here that it sticks outside, or if you have a label that can go here, you can do that too. I'm just going to leave this one plain. And and I think I'm going to use it for me. So there we are. And you now have mastered a few skills. You now know how to put on a zipper, and you also can box corners, which is great, and you can do zipper tabs. So there you go. You've learned 3 skills. Now if you just sized up this bag a little bit and put some handles on it, well, you've got a tote bag. So have fun with it and play around with different styles, and we'll see you in the next video.